Simone Biles speaking like never before about the mental health struggle that forced her to withdraw from events at the Tokyo Olympics and the years of trauma that led up to that moment.
Few names in modern sport carry the weight that Simone Biles does. She is the most decorated gymnast in history, a woman who has redefined what the human body can achieve on a competition floor. But behind the medals, the world records, and the iconic routines, a far more complicated story has been unfolding in real time. Health crises, public feuds, surgical procedures, and mounting questions about her athletic future have placed Biles at the center of a storm that nobody saw coming. In this video, we get into all of it. The champion who shocked the world at Tokyo. There is a version of Simone Biles that the world assumed was invincible. Born on March 14, 1997, in Columbus, Ohio, she grew up to become something sport had never quite seen before. By the time she competed at the 2016 Rio Olympics, she had claimed 4 gold medals and 1 bronze, and the gymnastics world had essentially run out of superlatives. 4 elements in the sport carry her name as official skills, a distinction that places her in the rarest company in her sport's history. Entering the Tokyo Games in 2021, she was not just the defending champion. She was, by any reasonable measure, the greatest gymnast who had ever lived. What happened next landed like a thunderclap. During the team final on July 27, 2021, Biles stepped onto the vault, launched herself into the air, and completed only 1.5 twists instead of the planned 2.5 in what should have been a textbook Aminar vault. She stumbled on the landing. Something was clearly wrong. Within hours, USA Gymnastics confirmed that she had withdrawn from the team competition. The statement was brief and clinical, saying she had pulled out to focus on her mental health. What followed was one of the most debated athletic decisions of the modern era. Biles later revealed the condition responsible: the twisties. For those outside gymnastics, the term can sound almost trivial, but it describes something genuinely terrifying. The twisties occur when a gymnast loses spatial awareness mid-air, becoming disoriented about where their body is in space during a twisting skill. For an athlete performing routines at the level Biles operates, this is not just a performance problem. It is a safety crisis. Landing wrong from that height and speed can cause catastrophic injury. Paralysis is not an exaggeration of the risk. USA Gymnastics released a statement that read, "After further medical evaluation, Simone Biles has withdrawn from the final individual all-around competition at the Tokyo Olympic Games in order to focus on her mental health." Over the following days, she withdrew from 4 additional individual event finals, eventually returning only for the balance beam final, where she performed a simplified routine and claimed bronze. Her total medal count at Tokyo was 2, a silver in the team final and a bronze on beam. Remarkable under normal circumstances, deeply painful given what she had been expected to achieve. The public reaction split sharply. Supporters celebrated her decision as courageous, a statement that mental health matters even at the pinnacle of sport. Critics were less generous, arguing that withdrawing from competition at the highest level of her career, Biles revealed on her Facebook Watch series that she had cried privately during those days in Tokyo, feeling both the weight of public expectation and the terror of a condition she could not simply will away. She described the experience later as one of profound isolation, noting in a 2025 interview with L'Equipe that after leaving the competition village, she rode the elevator and her body simply collapsed. She was sick for 10 days. 2 years of near silence from gymnastics followed. No competitions, no comeback announcements, just a long period of rehabilitation, reflection, and recovery. The gymnastics world moved on, adjusting to her absence. Then, in 2023, she returned at the U.S. Classic, gradually rebuilding the routines and the confidence that Tokyo had stripped away. That return accelerated into something remarkable: an 8th World All-Around title that year, followed by the announcement that she would compete at the 2024 Paris Olympics. Whatever had been broken in Tokyo was, at least temporarily, rebuilt. The Paris redemption and what came after. By the time the Paris Games opened in the summer of 2024, the narrative around Simone Biles had transformed completely. She was no longer the champion who had walked away. She was the champion who had come back. The question was not whether she would compete, but whether she could compete at the level her legacy demanded. The answer, delivered on the competition floor at the Bercy Arena, was an emphatic yes. Biles won 3 gold medals and 1 silver at the 2024 Paris Olympics, cementing what many observers described as one of the greatest individual comeback performances in Olympic history. Her all-around performance was breathtaking. Her floor routine drew a standing ovation. She was, again, undeniably, the best gymnast in the world. The gold medals brought her Olympic total to 7, placing her among the most decorated American athletes in the history of the Games. She also experienced a physical setback during Paris that received less attention at the time. She sustained a minor tear and strain in her calf muscle during competition, managing the injury through the remainder of the Games without withdrawing. That detail mattered more in retrospect than it appeared to at the time, because it pointed to something the Paris triumph had not eliminated. Biles was competing in a body that had absorbed enormous physical punishment across a career spanning more than a decade at the elite level. After Paris, she stepped away from competitive gymnastics. No timeline was given, no official retirement announced, just a withdrawal from the sport that had defined her. In a 2025 interview, she spoke about taking time off from the gym, describing the decision as a recognition that physical health and mental health needed to be in alignment before any return to competition. Her career had produced 11 Olympic medals and 30 World Championship medals. The question of whether she would compete again at the 2028 Los Angeles Olympics remained open, with Biles saying publicly that the decision belonged to her alone. In a statement captured by Sports Illustrated, she reflected that returning would be her choice, and that greedy or not, that was how it had to be. What she did not step away from was public life. Throughout 2025, Biles remained highly visible, attending events, building her brand, and engaging with her enormous social media following. She attended the 2025 ESPY Awards in a custom Zac Posen gown created with Athleta, her longtime sponsor. She appeared on podcasts and in interviews. She traveled extensively with her husband, Indianapolis Colts safety, Jonathan Owens, whom she had married in April 2023. The image she projected was one of a champion at rest, enjoying life beyond the gym, comfortable in her extraordinary legacy. But 2025 also brought something she had not anticipated: the first significant public controversy of her post-competition life. And it had nothing to do with gymnastics. The controversy that divided the public. Moving beyond the arena and into the broader public conversation was always going to carry risks for Simone Biles. In June 2025, those risks materialized in the most visible way possible. The episode began with a social media dispute over a transgender athlete competing for a Minnesota high school softball team. The team, Champlain Park High School, had won a state championship with a transgender pitcher. Riley Gaines, a former NCAA swimmer turned political commentator, who had become one of the most vocal opponents of transgender inclusion in women's sports, commented on the team's social media with the words, "To be expected when your star player is a boy." Biles saw the post and responded immediately and aggressively. She called Gaines truly sick, described her as a straight-up sore loser, and told her to bully someone your own size, which would ironically be a male, a reference to Gaines's height that functioned as a body-shaming attack. The backlash was instant and came from multiple directions. Biles apologized to Riley Gaines for getting personal in a social media dispute over transgender athletes in women's sports, stating in a post on X that the current system for handling transgender athletes in sports does not adequately balance competitive equity and inclusivity, and that getting personal with Gaines had not helped the conversation. She acknowledged that her body-shaming remark was out of line. Gaines accepted the apology, but maintained her position on transgender inclusion in women's sports, and the controversy dragged on for weeks across social media. The damage to Biles's public image was real. Supporters who had celebrated her courage at Tokyo and Paris were divided. Some felt she had been right to defend transgender athletes. Others felt the personal attack on Gaines. A third group felt that by apologizing and walking back her support for transgender inclusion, she had abandoned the athletes she had initially defended. Fans expressed frustration on social media following her comments at the 2025 ESPY Awards, where she accepted the Best Championship Performance Award and concluded her speech with the line, "I believe in the power of sport, the power of us, and, of course, the power of she," a phrase that many of her critics interpreted as provocative, given the controversy still surrounding her. The episode illustrated something important about the position Biles occupied in 2025. She was no longer just an athlete. She was a cultural figure, a brand, and a public voice on contested social issues, and those roles carried consequences that no amount of Olympic gold could fully insulate her from. Later that same year, in October 2025, she disclosed that she had undergone 3 cosmetic procedures: a breast augmentation, a lower blepharoplasty, and earlobe reconstruction. She made the disclosure on TikTok, framing it as an act of transparency consistent with her long-standing commitment to honesty with her followers. In a November 2025 interview, she told people that there was no shame in her choices and that young women had the right to make their own decisions about their bodies. She also revealed that she had tried Botox once, found that it caused one of her eyebrows to behave unexpectedly during gymnastics practice, and would not be repeating the experience. The breast augmentation provoked a specific conversation that circled back to athletics. 2 plastic surgeons, speaking to Radar Online, assessed the physical implications of the procedure for a potential gymnastics comeback. Both noted that implants of the size Biles had chosen could affect her center of gravity, alter rotational speed, and impact upper body balance and bar transitions. One surgeon observed that the implants were slightly large relative to her naturally petite athletic frame, and that, from a purely biomechanical standpoint, a smaller implant would have been optimal for maintaining maximal athletic performance. The experts were careful to note that with proper conditioning, adaptation was possible, but the questions were out in the world, and the gymnastics community was paying attention. A near-death scare and an uncertain future. Whatever questions existed about Simone Biles's future in gymnastics, they were overtaken completely by something far more serious in the summer of 2026. On June 6, 2026, Biles posted an image to her Instagram stories. It showed her wrist wrapped in multiple hospital bands. The caption was brief and stark. "I'm not one to normally share things like this because I value privacy in today's age, but almost dying wasn't on my bingo card earlier this week. She added that the experience had been one of, if not the scariest of her life, made worse by the fact that her husband Jonathan Owens was in Indianapolis for pre-season practices with the Colts. She said she had spent the week in bed resting and promised to explain the circumstances at some later point. She thanked her close circle for reaching out, visiting, and sending flowers. The seven-time Olympic gold medalist shared that she was recovering after what she described as a life-threatening medical emergency in June 2026, without disclosing what had actually happened. She provided no diagnosis, no explanation of the specific medical event, and no timeline for recovery. Representatives for Biles did not respond to media inquiries about the specifics. The world's most decorated gymnast had nearly died, and the public was left with hospital bracelets and a promise of future details that had not arrived by the time weeks had passed. The absence of information did not stop the story from growing. Biles maintained a relatively public profile in the weeks that followed. She attended the 2026 ESPY Awards in New York City on July 15th, appearing on stage to present and delivering remarks in a strapless metallic gown alongside Jonathan Owens. She traveled to the Dominican Republic. Publicly, she appeared well, but the June announcement remained unexplained, and the contrast between her visible public appearances and the severity of what she had described in that Instagram post created a tension that her followers found difficult to reconcile. Then came July 22nd, 2026. On his 31st birthday, Jonathan Owens accompanied his wife to what she described as a medical procedure. Biles posted a black and white photograph of herself in surgical attire, seated on a hospital bed, wearing a hair cap and hospital gown, with Owens beside her. The Olympic gymnast shared a photo on her husband's birthday, noting he took her to get her procedure, without disclosing what the procedure involved. She did not state whether the procedure was connected to the near-death emergency from June. She did note, with characteristic lightness, that she had woken from the procedure singing a song by Bossman Dlau. The questions multiplied. Was this a follow-up procedure connected to whatever had nearly killed her in June? Was it unrelated? Had the health crisis from earlier in the summer changed the calculus on any potential gymnastics comeback? None of those questions had been answered as of late July 2026. What made the timing particularly pointed was the context surrounding her in the gymnastics world. Her 2024 Paris teammate Suni Lee, the 2020 Olympic all-around champion, announced a competitive comeback in mid-July 2026. Jade Carey and Hesley Rivera, two other Paris teammates, had already announced their returns. Caitlin Ohashi, the former elite gymnast and NCAA sensation who had stepped away from competition for 13 years, made her return to the American and U.S. Classic competitions. The sport was moving forward without Biles, and the prospect of the 2028 Los Angeles Olympics was approaching with increasing speed. Biles had met with her coach Laurent Landy in July 2026, a detail she posted about publicly that suggested the possibility of a return had not been entirely abandoned. But the gap between that meeting and any competitive timeline remained enormous, and the health events of June and July had created new uncertainties that had not existed before. At 29 years old, with a body that had survived decades of elite gymnastics training, a breast augmentation, an unnamed near-death medical event, and a subsequent procedure, her legacy, whatever happens next, is not in question. 11 Olympic medals, 30 World Championship medals, 4 signature skills in the code of points, and a cultural influence on women's sport that extends far beyond gymnastics. Her net worth sits at an estimated $25 million in 2026, built primarily through endorsement deals with Athleta, Visa, United Airlines, and other major brands rather than through prize money. The gymnastics prize money at the Olympic level, roughly $37,500 per gold medal, has always been a small fraction of what her off-field presence generates. Forbes estimated her off-field earnings at approximately $11 million in 2024 alone. But a legacy and a future are two different things. The Biles who stood on the Paris podium less than 2 years ago was the unquestioned apex of her sport. The Biles of mid-2026 was a 29-year-old recovering from an undisclosed medical emergency, navigating a public controversy that had not fully resolved, and watching her former teammates begin the journey back toward competition that she had not yet confirmed she would take. The story of Simone Biles has never followed a predictable script. Just when many believed the Tokyo Olympics marked the closing chapter of her competitive career, she returned to the sport and rewrote the narrative in spectacular fashion at the Paris Games, once again proving why she is widely regarded as the greatest gymnast of all time. Now, the developments of 2026 have raised fresh uncertainty about what lies ahead. Questions surrounding her future have become more complicated than ever, and for the first time in years, there are no clear answers. Whether her next move involves another remarkable comeback, a carefully considered retirement, or an entirely different path outside elite gymnastics, speculation continues to grow. For now, things are not going well for Simone Biles, and how these challenges will ultimately shape the next chapter of her remarkable journey remains genuinely unknown. And that's a wrap on this video. If you made it this far, you are clearly someone who loves a deep dive, and we genuinely appreciate you for it. Before you go, do us a quick favor. Hit that like button if this video gave you something to think about, and subscribe if you haven't already. We drop videos like this regularly, covering the stories behind the headlines that deserve more than a 30-second take. Drop a comment below telling us what you think happens next with Simone Biles. Do you think she comes back for Los Angeles 2028? Or is this the beginning of the end of her competitive career? We genuinely want to hear your take. See you in the very next one.